Okay, I'll get started. So welcome everybody. I'm really delighted to introduce Mikako Bika, who is presenting this internal seminar today. Mikako is a diabetologist from Okayama University in Japan. And she's been here with us for the last about 2.5 months, doing a research visit, visiting the center and also the Shaman Medicine Project. And she's involved in a graphic medicine collaboration project between our project and Duke and Charlotte, who's sitting in the room today. So it's just been delightful having you stay here and having you in the center. And Mikako is going to present on her recent research project, the doctor, patient and doctor family, a patient who is a doctor being seen by doctors as a patient. So I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, and thank you very much. And thank you very much for giving me this great opportunity to give a presentation in front of all of you today. I have 3 scripts today. And I have been at the center for 2 months now. And I will return to Japan next week. I will miss you very much. While I was here, I have had a lot of wonderful opportunities, such as the Shaman Medicine Project and participating in art workshop and visiting a medical humanities class at medical school workshop and attending comic classes. This experience gave me many inspiration for this research, which I will discuss today. And Luna also introduced me important literature and books and gave me a lot of advice. So I would like to thank you all of the kindness you've shown me here at this center. Thank you very much. Now I would like to start my presentation. First, I would like to start with the background of my research. So first one is the dark and bright side of modern medicine. I want to say 3 points. Modern medicine, first, mind-body dualism. Modern medicine based on science developed from the mind-body dualism proposed by René Descartes in the 17th century, which divided man into 2 parts: the body, the object of scientific study, and the mind, the object of philosophical and religious study. And modern medicine has developed in a way that sees man as a thing and understand disease as a breakdown of the material system. The benefits of the remarkable development of modern medicine have been enormous. However, dark side is modern medicine is said to have focused on physical abnormalities, resulting in a tendency to neglect the human aspect of the patient. So second one about the medical gaze, Foucault's concept. Foucault develops the concept of the medical gaze, describing how doctors modify the patient's story, fitting it into a biomedical paradigm, filtering out non-biomedical material. In medical education, medical students acquire a professional view, the medical gaze, as part of enculturation. In the past, doctors used to ask their patients, what's wrong? But from around the end of the 18th century, as a result of acquiring this medical gaze, doctors began to ask, what is wrong with you? With the development of pathological anatomy, the gaze turned from the patient as a whole into the patient's body. This is dark side. The third one is disease and illness. Medical anthropologist Arthur Kleinman proposed the view that doctors treat event as disease and patients live as illness. Disease is a physical disorder or breakdown defined within the framework of modern medicine and determined by the doctor's diagnosis. Illness, on the other hand, is a patient's personal experience of suffering experienced in the mind and body of the patient, and is susceptible to the society and culture to which the person belongs. In current clinical practice, the approach to disease is dominated by evidence-based medicine, EBM. During medical interviews, doctors spend time gathering information for diagnosis and explaining the disease. In comparison, doctors spend less time listening to the patient's illness narrative. This is dark and bright side of modern medicine. So next, I would like to talk about the 3 types of suffering in healthcare, which are patient suffering, doctor suffering, and doctor-patient suffering. There are many narratives on patients suffering, but today I would like to share some from the book, The Cry of the Flesh by Heavy Carrel. Of course, Luna introduced me this book. Very, very excellent book. Dr. Heavy Carrel was diagnosed with lymphangiomyomatosis. Now, how do you know about this? I'm sorry, I don't detail about this. Her diagnosis is in 2006. So patients suffering. Why do patients still complain of feeling alienated, objectified? Carrel emphasizes not only the curtailment of spatial possibilities, but the abrupt descent of limits onto a world previously larger, freer, more open. These limits not only restrict physical movement, but inflict existential possibilities. On a naturalistic view, illness can be exhaustively accounted for by physical facts alone. This description is objective, neutral, and third-personal. And the normativist approach sees illness as something that must be socially evaluated as negative. But again, the first-person perspective is missing. And Carrel views illness as a life-transforming process in which there is plenty of bad, but also surprisingly some good. So this question, can seriously ill or disabled people have a good life? So she said 2 central ideas, that illness induces adaptation and that adversity is a source of creative responses to it. So these 2 ideas serve as the basis for the positive reply, she said. And Carrel suggests another perspective, that of the second person. Perhaps I didn't know, I don't know this pronunciation, the I and O, though. I and thou relationship, maybe Buber concept, Martin Buber concept. One person facing another, mediated, ethically demanding, acknowledging each other's humanity is also missing from the medical encounter. And my opinion, this is very important in clinical work, I believe. And next, doctor suffering. Yeah, Daniel Offrey, she's medical doctor. She said doctors suffer from the negative emotions such as fear, shame, grief, and anger. One way to avoid letting the sadness felt at work affect one's personal life is through compartmentalization of emotions. But notably, how this strategy is not helpful. Grief permeates their entire life. Grief undermines the doctor's mind and distracts him or her from their family and patients. And many doctors report that they have tried to distance themselves emotionally from their patients, but the patients are more sensitive to this. And Dr. Yamagami is a Japanese, she's also a medical doctor. So she said there is a close relationship between doctors' consciousness of their role and their suffering. And it is there that doctors are vulnerable and fragile. The fact that doctors' suffering has been ignored by patients and their families, society, and by doctors themselves is itself part of the professional's suffering, she said. And have you ever seen BBC TV drama? This is going to hurt. Actually, when I was here, I cannot stop watching that drama. So 6 hours, 7 hours. Very tired and crying many times. So anyway, very exhausting and pardon you said parsing is parsing is parsing. So how can I say? You told me the expression vomit and good feeling like that.
Catharsis.
Yeah. Sorry. So anyway, the BBC TV drama, this is going to show the very realistic process in which the main character, a gynecologist, and a female intern, this is very sad story, female intern gradually become emotionally paralyzed. Yeah, so anyway, so next slide. And doctor suffering, this is second slide. This is about shame. Medical residence shame may be triggered by events related to patient care, learning, and personal goals. Effects of shame may be significant. They include intense emotional and psychological distress, impaired empathy, impaired physical health, unprofessional behavior, and social isolation. This is Will's article. The second one is, this is also Dr. Wu. Although patients are the first and obvious victims of medical mistakes, doctors are wounded by the same errors. So they said they are the second victims. In the absence of mechanism for healing, physicians find dysfunctional ways to protect themselves. They often respond to their own mistakes with anger and projection of blame, and may act defensively or carelessly and blame or scold the patient or the member of the healthcare team. So of course, patients should not be blamed or scolded by doctors. However, the reality is that oftentimes doctors are not left with enough emotional resources to deal effectively with their own emotions. And another article written by a British GP states that while other emotionally demanding professions such as psychotherapy offer regular supportive supervision, GPs are often left to manage their emotional responses to their patient alone. So in Japan, same situation, maybe in US. So this is about doctor-patient suffering. So what is suffering of doctors when they become patients? So Dr. Klitzman quoted the term medical self from one of the interviews and used it to refer to the act of behaving like a doctor, even when the doctor is a patient. The medical self is embedded in the minds of doctor patients, and therefore doctor patients must deal with role reversal and role determination. Doctors often try to be superhuman, not only for their patients, but also for members of their own community. There is also an external pressure from patients and communities for doctors to always be healthy. Doctors are urged to not be burdened on their colleagues or others. And also self-stigmatizing views, which possibly emerge from the belief that doctors are invincible, represent a major obstacle to doctors returning to work. Self-stigmatization was central to the participants' accounts. Several described themselves as failure and appear to have internalized the negative view of others, Henderson said like that. So now, background, my researcher experience. So this is about me. So the researcher's husband is a doctor, cardiologist who developed a brain tumor, glioblastoma, in 2012. And after around 5 years of fighting the disease, one operation, repeated chemotherapy, immunotherapy, and radiotherapy, he passed away in 2017. The researcher witnessed how medicine helped him many times, but also how he suffered because of it. The researcher is also a doctor. I'm a physician and diabetologist. And however, through the experience of being a patient's family member and bereaved family member, different questions arose in my regarding medical healthcare, which I myself had taken part in for more than a decade. So this is a 4-panel comic I made actually last year, reflecting on the experience my husband and I had while he was fighting his illness. And I will share some of them today. So this is 4-panel comic created from the, at first, doctor-patient perspective. So 1, 2, 3, 4, like this. So on one time, my husband and I went to the hospital to hear the result of the MRI image test. His doctor said, "We found a relapse here," pointing at the new lesion in the MRI image. On the way home in the taxi, my husband looked mad and upset and said, "What the hell is wrong with that guy? He sounded as if he was all excited to find the relapse. He doesn't even think about my feeling. Disgusting." We arrived home. After arriving home, I said to my husband, "I want to talk about what doctor told us at the hospital today." However, to my surprise, my husband interrupted me and said, "But we didn't go anywhere today." Did my husband just erase the unpleasant memory from his mind, or did he pretend to have forgotten it? I don't know. I don't know. The second one is, this is another 4-panel comic from the doctor family perspective. 1, 2, 3, 4. After finding out that my husband's brain tumor had relapsed, I went to the hospital alone to hear more from the doctor about a clinical trial for a new type of radiotherapy. The doctor has suggested that my husband should participate in the trial as a patient. Doctor said, You must be in a lot of pain. I understand how you feel," showing an empathic attitude. Then he said, "I will check against the conditions of clinical trial to see if your husband can participate. Treatment history relapse." Next moment, the doctor said, "All right, we can do it. Let's do it." And snapping his fingers. And I silently thought to myself, did he just snap his fingers? Did his eyes just gleam behind his glasses? Is he happy because he will be able to use my husband in an experiment as a human subject? How can he be so rude? However, after my husband passed away, I had a somber realization that I had been treating my own patients in the same way. Whenever I provided them information about clinical trial for diabetes treatments, I am in no position to accuse him of being callous. Suddenly, I felt an overwhelming sense of shame. And at times, I found it very difficult to sit in front of my patients because of it. Third one. This is another 4-panel comic from the doctor family perspective. After my husband passed away, I had a conversation with a pediatrician. She said, I have children myself, so it's just too painful to even think about what it's like to be a mother of a child with cancer. And it's really hard because something I end up having to distance myself and sounding aloof when I talk to them. When I heard this, I recalled a doctor who was around the same age as my husband, saying to me while staring at the monitor, "Your husband should accept his disease now. Radiotherapy is no longer an option." By then, my husband had had multiple relapses and had undergone multiple treatments. And he had already had too many radiotherapies to go through another one. How can the doctor be so cold? I wondered. But now, I'm starting to think that maybe the doctor felt the pain too, because he was around the same age as my husband. Maybe that's why he didn't even look at us while he talked. Maybe they were both in pain. So the doctor also had his own family. Everyone was suffering at that time. Everyone was in pain. What could have been done? After my husband passed away, I started to feel a strong aversion, not to doctors, but to medicine, because of all the suffering that was caused by it. At one point, I even wished to somehow take revenge on medicine. However, I realized that what I wanted to do was to explore the question, what could be done for patients, families, and doctors who are suffering. I wanted to explore the question as a fellow doctor and a family member of a patient. This leads to the discussion of my research. So the research aims to identify what kind of suffering occurs when doctor become a patient with a refractory means difficult to cure, and poor prognosis disease. And this research, I think, made question the assumption of medical science. So this is research method. Research method is a dialogical auto-ethnography and interactive self-ethnography. The participant is me, researcher. So data collection and analysis. Researcher is interviewed on the web by research collaborator, and the interview data is analyzed by using the steps for coding and theorization, SCAT method. SCAT is sequential and thematic qualitative data analysis technique. It consists of 4-step coding process used to identify themes and concepts, a storyline writing using themes and concepts, and writing theories from the storyline. The SCAT file is placed on the web, where the interviews are mutually written and analyzed as needed. So Professor Takashi Otani is a research collaborator. He's a qualitative research methodologist and developer of SCAT, and a qualitative researcher in education, clinical research, and health professionals education. And we have known each other over 9 years. And he published this paradigm in design of qualitative study from research methodology to SCAT. This is text in Japanese. So if you know Japanese researcher, please strongly recommend this textbook. Actually, bestseller in Japan. And this is image of the research. Interviewer can be said to be interlocutor. Interview, which is a dialogue that takes place on the website, is a process of interactive reflection on lived experience of interviewee and the process of constructing constructive text. Interviewee, who is doctor, family, wife, witnessed, doctor, patient, husband. Qualitative data analysis by using SCAT analysis has been done on the data from dialogue on the website. These are process of decontextualization of the lived experience and of recontextualization of the lived experience. And SCAT procedure is here. So it consists of 2 procedures. The first procedure is 4 steps coding. Segmented data is first written at the leftmost column of SCAT matrix form, and the following codes are put in consecutively. Step 1, noteworthy words or phrases from the text. Step 2, paraphrase of 1. Step 3, concepts from out of the text that account for 2. Step 4, themes, constructs in consideration of context. And the second procedure is writing storyline and theory. And after completion of 1 through 4, you write storyline using 4. And finally, you write theory from your storyline. This is SCAT procedure. And this is SCAT file on the web in Japanese. And we start this from January this year. The scat file is placed on the web where the interviews are mutually written and analyzed as needed. This method not only eliminates the need of transcribing the speech data, but also allows the interviewees to write the relevant text in a more in-depth manner. It has already been thoroughly elaborated by the interviewees, and the relevant language has already been translated into the language of the interviewee. And this is the example of scat in English. This is the first procedure, 4 steps coding. And the second procedure, storyline and theory, is followed after this. So still in the midway. So this is in the midway of research. And these are emerging themes so far. And the conceptual framework is being explored in the literature on these themes. So the first one, inhumanity of medicine. So patient and patient family were deeply hurt. Doctor is also like robot without emotions. So second one, falling from human perspective to a case perspective. This is, I think, a Foucault concept, medical gaze. And third one is doctor beneficiary and patient beneficiary. So usually doctor tends to hide their benefit or beneficiary under visible patient benefit or beneficiary. And power inherent in knowledge. This is concept of Foucault. Operability and dominance. The change from subject to object, and molding of the patient into the scenario by the doctor. And last, these three themes are related to power of doctor with operability and dominance. But actually, we have not gotten the clear result yet. But Luna and maybe Cat also gave me a lot of phenomenological concepts. So I think phenomenological concepts are also potential candidates as a theme. Yeah, so funding and IRB and reference. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mikako. It's wonderful. We've got time for questions or comments or discussion, so we can open up the floor.
I have a question.
Yes, yeah.
That was great, and I'm happy to know more about your project. I'm going to try to be super clear. I just wanted to know how you use those kind of graphic medicine bits that you presented, like the comics.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have also a place in the methodological process, or are they, or in the story production, or are they independent?
Actually, I'm not sure, but usually this is that comic is not method. But actually, how can I say, ideal audience is medical doctor. And medical doctors sometimes, how can I say, they don't want to read this kind of how can I say, content, but they want to read very scientific and positivistic way. But this scientific way, I cannot explain my lived experience. But they want to, they don't like to read text, very long text, how can I say, literature, how can I say, usually phenomenological article is very long, just text, but make a doctor, like that. So I want to use graphic. So I'm just wondering how should I show this results of this research?
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah. Just to continue, because I think that those images, especially the fact that you can see kind of an encounter between people, and you can see how things look from the perspective of someone, and that is immediately kind of makes a lot of things clear. So it's a good way to situate the reader in a perspective, like through the image. I think it's useful, it's powerful.
Actually, very helpful for me.
I think it's an interesting point just to say, I mean, I think having worked with both of them I'm Charlotte, by the way, I'm visiting from London, but working with them on the graphic medicine and shame in medicine project, it's an interesting point to bring up in terms, because we've been exploring different applications where, there's sort of power in the perspectives and the images where sort of text or other things can't do. It's an interesting point to sort of explore in, as you're processing personally, or even in terms of qualitative research. It is interesting, can even the process of you taking the whole experience, thinking about how you would place it in those images, what you want to put, that's a process in itself, right? That draws out something, and you wonder, even then someone looking at it, not you, so that was something for you, and then someone looking at it, what you were saying is that may have, sort of been more powerful or hit home in a different way. So that's also interesting. That might be different. So it could be interesting to explore either, sort of beyond education, but either through the research process, or if it's for, sort of communication of whatever your results are, can the graphic narrative be an interesting, format, methodology? I like that, right? And, yeah, no, I mean, it'd be interesting to explore, because it is done in things such as art therapy, and it is sort of used in different ways. Could be interesting maybe for you to think about how you want it to fit in, because that does make it unique, seems, to other types of.
Actually, this making graphic comic somehow very hard time to describe, right? This graphic, but at the same time healing. So very interesting. This is research, but how can I say, at the same time I heal. At the same time, very interesting experience. This is also.
Just wanted to ask you something a bit more about the methods. So the person that you're doing this with, they're asking questions of you, but who's doing the thematic analysis? Is that you or the person?
So you mean analysis?
Yeah.
Actually, at first I analysis, but now both. But both means mutually.
So who decides the questions for the interview? Is that you as well, or just him? So, sorry, who does the questions in the interviewing? Is that just him?
Yeah.
So he does the questions, you answer the questions, and then you both analyze.
Yeah. Yes, but how can I say? On the website, he asks question and I answer. But in this process, I answer, but at the same time I analyze. So first, text is contains analyzation. Does that make sense? So both analyzing and answering occurred at the same time.
So when he's questioning, is he not analysing as well for the next question? Do you see what I mean? So when he asks you one question, you answer, and he comes up with another question. Did he not have to analyse your answer in order to get the next question?
Yeah, so actually I cannot divide answer and analyze. So usually text and step 1 to 4 and analyze. But in this case, how do I say? On the website, I can see the previous dialogue. So it means I can analyzing and answering his question at the same time. So I cannot divide analyze and answering. Does this make
But I'm
sense?
just wondering, I'm interested in where his questions are coming from, if they're not from his analysis of your previous answer and your story, like where, if that seems like an input, whereas the rest of it is you. So what's his role? Like, do you see what I mean? He has a specific role in having this, making this happen, and then the rest of it is you. Like, can you draw him in more, or like, why is it structured like that?
So you want to know his role.
Yeah.
So he is interviewee and also interlocutor. So I cannot explain well, but so we together weaving narrative about my lived experience like that.
Yeah, so it's his lived experience, he seems very separate is what I'm trying to say, like he's a sort of neutral thing that's been plonked in. And I just thought that was quite interesting because so much of it is about you. And yet is he questioned, is he accountable, what's his role? You see what I mean?
Actually, I think his these days SCAT file is very long and very deep, profound issue we discussed. So I think his experience also, how can I say, influence. I noticed. Sometimes he showed his experience. So like that's so. But focus is my lived experience. But how can I say? If he said he's explained his lived experience, this stimulate and I can how can I say? I can remember. I can recall my own experience vividly. It means his experience stimulate to emerge my own experience. Sorry, difficult to explain, but does that make sense? I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. It's such a, just a very powerful experience. And you mentioned a little bit that doing the comic, that had an effect on you too. And so my question is, how has doing this research, this whole process, including the reading of the different theories and going through that, how has that affected the way that you've processed the experience, or what did that bring up in you, or what do you feel you've learned throughout? How did going through this research affect yourself? What did you learn from it? How did you change?
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, actually, about 1 year have passed. I changed a lot. Actually, I like to revenge to medicine. So I was very angry to my husband, doctors. But I realized, oh, I'm a doctor. Oh, I forgot about that. And I did the same thing to my patients. My patients are almost diabetes patients, not usually they don't have cancer. Sometimes they have cancer, but that is not problem, diabetes or cancer. I think I did the same thing So I was very shocked. And also, I was suffering as a doctor in front of the patient. I cannot control my emotion. Sometimes patients, showed their strong feeling to me. So, I hide my emotion. I just pretend I'm strong, like that. So, oh, I'm doctor. So that is why I want to do. So during research, I'm changing. And also I'm still changing, I think. And graphic medicine is very strong power to me. It means I can express my lived experience to graphic medicine. Also, this graphic medicine heal me like that. So very interesting experience for me.
I was just going to ask if you have met other doctors who've had a similar experience that you've had, who've experienced a family member. Have you met any, like, talked to other doctors who can relate to your experience?
Actually, my generation is very rare. I'm young, so this is very rare experience. But sometimes older doctors, they have similar experience, but I don't know. Actually, they are hiding their real experience. So actually, I don't know. So hopefully this research can heal them. Hopefully.
Probably is one of the, because you were asking the question at the end of one of your comics, what could we do or what should we do? In some ways, how could we do this differently maybe? Because everyone was suffering. So I think, that what you talked about is perhaps something that would be good to change, which is everyone maybe feeling so isolated that we hold it all within because we feel we have to be a professional somehow. We're not human, but we are human. So, I mean, if it's helpful to share. So I'm a sort of primary care doctor, and one thing, and that's sort of interesting as you're talking about this to share is just the relationship of the different roles that we hold. So my father got cancer on his birthday actually, and he ended liver cancer, and he ended up getting a transplant. So and that was a huge, hard process, and was hard even with me in medicine. It was still hard and hard to experience things in the shoes of a patient. So also had that similar experience. And I remember one thing that a mentor doctor had told me, which still really was helpful for me, that stayed with me, be interesting to explore. What his advice was, he said, when you're a doctor and you're a patient or a family of a patient, it can be hard because you feel that you still need to be a doctor, or right, the doctor's talking to you more because you understand, you have to ask the questions, you have to help with the medicine. And his advice to me when I was going through this, he said, my advice is that the best thing you can do is connect your family member with a really good doctor you trust. Once you have that, allow yourself not to be a doctor in that relationship anymore, and only to be a daughter, a wife, whatever your relationship with that person. And that was his advice, because he said it's really just too difficult, and really difficult if you feel like you need to be a doctor and a loved one. So I don't know what you think of this, but just sharing, I think it is and I remember this was only because we had that relationship, but otherwise I wasn't talking about it to anyone else. And it did feel very isolating. Like you said, people don't talk about it, but people must have these experiences. So I don't know if you experienced or others have experienced, but it is difficult to think about, you know, you are a doctor, but you also are a wife, you are a mother, you are, and you have different needs, right? And you have different emotions that come up in these relationships. So, yeah.
On TV show, this is going too hard.
Yeah.
All doctors cannot express their feeling, even for partner.
Yeah.
Very real drama, I think.
Is this, because that's a UK based in the NHS, do you think it reflects Japan, like Japanese
yeah.
medical culture as well?
Yeah, as
Yeah,
well. Yeah. In Japan, I think more Japanese culture hide our feeling more. So very tough, I think, very hard. Yeah, I think.
Thank you very much. I mean, lots of questions. Great presentation. I was gonna, I suppose because I work on narrative, I wanted to ask you about the taxi in your first sort of set of panels. So, you know, in the first set of panels, it's the diagnosis and then the argument in the taxi, and then there's the taxi, and then there's the kind of your husband forgetting about the conversation. And what's interesting about that, I mean, from a narrative perspective, is that usually in visual storytelling, the taxi would come first to establish where you are. But by putting the taxi after the conversation, what that does is it creates the sense of silence. And what I noticed also is it's the only, I mean, I might be wrong, but of the panels that you showed us, it's the only panel that doesn't have any people in it and doesn't have any story in it, right? So it's kind of like becomes this locus of silence or a kind of cipher for silence. And so I was just wondering, this happens to me all the time. I ask authors what they think about things and they go, oh, well, I just did it. And like, that's the joke on literary critics, right? Is that we always invest much more meaning in decisions that are maybe made on some other level than the conscious. But I was just wondering whether you wanted to talk a little bit about the taxi.
Okay, yeah, this is very interesting question for me. Okay, I just put not consciously, I can say, but maybe that conversation. I do like to talk about this today's doctors. That is at home. But taxi, maybe, yeah. Actually, I was very shocked. My husband was upset. He was very angry. And taxi, but how can I say, maybe my potential some feeling, maybe I like to, I need some time.
Yeah.
Wow. And at home, excuse me, I'd like to talk about today's clinic conversation. And my husband, oh, I didn't go anywhere. Maybe I think that express, I need some time to calm down. I also have upset. My husband was upset, and I was so upset. So I need some time to calm down, maybe. But very interesting question, wow.
Well, I mean, I guess that it then comes to kind of follow-up would be, I think that's pretty, Not that I'm anybody to endorse what you were saying about your own work, but I think that that's a really compelling response to the question. In which case, then perhaps one of the things that might be fits what you're doing with graphic medicine into the broader question of, I guess, the transformation that you're describing is also about, I guess, how you depict the time that you take. So that time is given a kind of form, but without attempting to give that form a kind of a narrative, right? Or rather, without it superimposing a kind of word conversation onto the time that that takes. And in some ways, then the taxi kind of functions as that, like a kind of space of, because it's also like, what's interesting is the perspective is suddenly changing, right? You're always over somebody's shoulder with the other three panels, and suddenly you're establishing us from outside, which in some ways mimics the research process, right? Where your analysis of your conversations, you know, as you said, you were in a kind of you had anger about this, and then you started to see yourself in your own position with your patients as if it were in a different perspective. And so that shifting of perspective is in some ways mirrored in the graphic medicine, but also that the taxi then plays a really crucial role in, I guess, acting like a black box that allows for this development without trying to narrate what that development is, but just allowing the develop. You need to have something that stands in for that development. I don't know if that resonates or.
Love what you just did with the taxi.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating taxi. I
It
think
is,
it's-
but it works so well. Like
Yeah.
the instinct you had to draw just the taxi gives it like a pause or something.
Yeah. Actually, I started to write graphic medicine last year. So before that, I couldn't, maybe very hard to express my feeling. So anyway, so I think my perspective is changing and now still changing. So a very interesting question. Thank you.
I think that's really, yeah, it's a first of all, I think it was a lovely image to choose, and the analysis is also.
Analysis, yeah.
I mean, I think to me, one thing that's just really nice is it starts playing like it's like a movie, right? It's sort of we're there, and then all of a sudden, a movie you can pan out, you can look from, as you were saying, a further perspective. And so for me, when I was seeing that, I thought, wow, it's just a really beautiful metaphor, right? So instead of saying 2 hours later, back at home, which is, you can also do that, but to use the taxi to show time, to show distance, to give us the placement, I thought it is really, really well done. Interesting to sort of analyze.
Yeah. Very nice analysis.
Yeah, very nice analysis.
Have you done more? Have you drawn more than the ones you showed?
Yes, sometimes.
Wow.
I have some impressive topic and I still creating. So please analyze. Maybe do research.
Are they always the four frames as well?
Yeah, for panel is easy to create.
I'm curious because, from other countries, Japan is a very strong country for comics.
Yeah.
And so do you have any thoughts on, do you think in Japan comics are viewed, is it something people are used to, maybe more than other countries? How do people interact with comics, and do you feel, is there a cultural component that?
Okay, I never read manga.
Okay.
in Japan, but young generation medical school students, most students read manga. So I sometimes use medicine, the graphic to medical school students. Please create 4-panel comic about clinical clerkship stories, significant story like that.
Ah.
But students are very upset. We like to read, but we hate writing. But very interesting.
Yeah.
They create creative work, I think.
Did you take any kind of courses or anything to start drawing them? Did you take, were you
I know.
taught how to do it?
You mean I learn?
Yeah.
No, just my own way.
Right. Yeah,
Wow.
it's good.
Yeah. It's great. This is curiosity, because Mikako's been auditing a class in art history and visual culture on comics that Paul Williams teaches. Has that influenced you in terms of how you think about comics?
That comic, I think students are very, how can I say, they know, basically they have a lot of basic knowledge about concept of manga, comics. For example, male gaze. I'm female, so very impressive, male gaze. And also, yeah, I'm not sure that comic class influenced my creative graphic, but I learned a lot. How can I say? Manga is very, comic is very deep culture, and of course, culture and country culture and how can I say? For example, war or some disaster influence the economy also influence the comic. So very interesting, but I'm not sure that influenced me.
I'll just ask you something else related to that a bit. It goes back to my other question is, your interlocutor that's doing this with you, if you were going to place him in that where is he? Is he looking or is he in there?
We use Google Drive.
No, I'm like, if you were going to, on your comic, the
a comic, about comic.
The images that you're making.
Yeah, okay.
This man that is helping you with the analysis and the interviews, is he in the story or is he looking at the story? Where is he in relation to the comics? I'm not expressing this very well, am I? Can anybody else, does anyone know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, like within I guess the questions about within the graphic.
Yeah.
So you've got the 4 panels.
Yeah.
If you were to do a kind of graphic about the current process of the research, I guess, he might be someone in the panel. Yeah, so he would appear as a character in the panel.
Is he an actor in it or is he a person watching the panel? This sort of goes back to my question about what his role is. Is he active in the panel, in the story, or is he outside the story? And how does that relate to you?
You mean co-researcher watch that panel?
Yeah, is he in the panel? Is he looking at the panel? Where is he?
Actually, I didn't tell about the existence of graphic. But maybe last year that was on how can I say, Japanese Graphic Medicine Society. How can I say, show my comic graphic on the web, and maybe 2 or 3 months before I came here, my co-researcher found. So it means I think.
But what's his role in the process as well? I'm trying to. I don't know.
So how can no relationship?
No, but now I've not explained it very well, don't worry. I'll just try and think of it.
So what-
Talk to it.
Maybe just if you were going to do a 4-panel comic of the research process now,
I see.
would you put him inside the comic? Or no, he would be someone looking at the comic now doing the research? Would he be inside, do you think? Or do you think he would be outside looking at what you make?
Actually, very difficult.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
makes sense,
yeah.
makes sense.
That's
Yeah.
like my other question. Is like,
Yeah,
what is
I
he?
can understand
Who is he?
the
Yeah.
It's
Because
one-
it connects to the medical gaze and the male gaze and the gaze of the researcher. Like,
Yeah.
what is his role? What is your role? Like, how does that?
maybe outside,
Hmm.
but these days, how can I say, we've context, so they how can I say started involved. So I think he started involved.
An invisible hand.
Yeah.
Moving
Yeah.
a puppeteer.
Very interesting question
Yeah.
for me. Wow.
Okay,
Yeah,
got
it was
that.
worth it. It was worth it.
Because dialogue with him, so
It's in I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to have to wrap up, but one more comment from.
No, I was just going to say what's really interesting in terms of, because there's obviously a lot of stuff in sociology and anthropology about the power of the interviewer and the power of the researcher. But what's really fascinating about this process is from my understanding, you invited him in. So you're kind of the power person, and you've kind of invited him to act as a kind of wall, I guess, or a sounding board against which to produce your research. At which point you kind of think, well, this is really quite a cool kind of, I guess, because Chris is here, I'm going to kind of wax on about like anti-psychiatry movements and like, but it's a kind of Guattarian, like make the patient the leader of the asylum or some such thing, where you kind of go, actually, it doesn't have to be the researcher who leads the research. It can be the person researched who insists on the researcher coming in and then holding them at a kind of whatever distance that you want them to.
Yeah, to be honest, this is recorded my co-research. I listened to this recording. To be honest, I invited
Who are
him.
you?
Yeah, I invited him as a co-researcher, but at first I'm wondering some candidate, a female philosopher and male this person. His specialty is education. And this is very interesting question. And I decided he is researcher and co-researcher because he has male gaze. There's one reason. I cannot explain well, but doctor is very, how can I say, doctor profession is very masculine.
Yeah.
And if I collaborate with female researcher, maybe result of research, maybe only female doctor or female race. My idea of this is male doctor. But very surprised. And also, he is not medical doctor. This is very big, important point. He has not. He don't have doctor gaze.
Yeah.
This is very important point.
I can just add something small because a while ago I did a project where I had to interview doctors and nurses. And the interviews were so different. It was about COVID, and it was about the response to COVID in Chile. And doctors basically used this as an opportunity to teach me.
Teach me.
Yeah.
I can understand.
To present kind of a fully formed
Yeah.
strategy.
Yeah.
While nurses, they were much more open to tell me that actually it was chaos, it was super hard, it was super emotional, which is what I was expecting as an interviewer, you know. But interviewing a male doctor, especially, was super challenging. Like, they never gave me what I was expecting, you know. They gave me something that I could just search on Google, basically. You know, like an account of decisions and their consequences.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that plays out in this process of asking someone to ask you the questions, you know, because of the medical self, as you say. It is hard to interview a medical self. You know, to make him go out of that persona.
Yeah.
But the same problem potentially with the research as well. It's all the interviewing up, Laura Nader and everybody that, you know, you can have the same, that's why I was so interested in this person's role. It's fascinating.
Really, really.
Yeah, we should finish because we've gone over time, but if you can join me in thanking you. Thank you for Thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
Research is
yeah.
so super interesting. So thank you.
So brave and sort of such a positive